So a lot of people don't really know who I am, but I'm Military Snake. This channel of mine, the second channel, Major Rager, was a former alias of mine, and my current gamer tag, Military Snake, is the gamer tag that I use to play Pre-Fortress 2 since January of 2023. It's a bit late to the party, considering that the development of the game technically started in December of 2019, but I have played this game incredibly extensively to the point where at the height of the mod's population and in the most popular servers, I was one of the top 10 players probably in the world to be playing at that time, at least in the country. I have developed an in-depth understanding of the mechanics. I understand the game a lot better than most other TF2 mods, and at this point, TF2 itself, really. And if there's one game that I would have to notate as my favorite multiplayer exclusive game of all time, it would be this. And so I have this personal connection with the game. I think it's mechanically incredible on an objective level. And this video is going to be a bit of a mix of my objective and subjective reasonings and takes about the game and the direction that I'm hearing it's going and the direction I know it's already been going for a bit and why I might be concerned. So Pre-Fortress started out as this mod to go back to the TF2 beta from like 06 or 07 and slowly developed into its own thing, but it very quickly developed its own identity as this sort of mix between Team Fortress Classic and Team Fortress 2 because of where the beta was at that particular point in time. All the classes have grenades. There is a health and armor system, and the classes, by nature of having grenades and varying health and armor systems, are very much solidified as particular roles. They're not as generalized as a lot of TF2 mods, and even the base game itself has made them out to be. Scout, for example, very low health and very weak armor. Concussion grenades and caltrops, I believe they're called. I just call them bear traps because that's what they seem to resemble, like those cartoonish bear traps of sorts. He's got a nail gun, a shotgun, and a bat, and his primary use is to capture control points and capture flags. That is his primary role in the game, right? However, because of his improved viability in combat with better damage in the shotgun and the nail gun, considering the source engine and how source shotguns work, as opposed to the TFC shotgun, Scout works a lot better in combat like his TF2 self with the scattergun and pistol. Soldier works pretty much exactly the same except for his standard frag grenade and nail bomb, which works really well. Pyro, of course, has this flamethrower that has been readapted to mix the old flamethrower from TFC and the incendiary rockets from TFC, so that now the alt fire isn't an air blast, it's a incendiary rocket that flies in an arc, a slow arc, from the flamethrower and will explode on impact with anything, and anything in that blast radius will light on fire. It's a small blast radius, but it's pretty decent. And you can also charge that in the same way that you can charge sticky bombs to lengthen the arc, as it were, like increase the distance of the rocket. And so, of course, Pyro has standard frag grenades and napalm grenades that will explode once they land and settle on the ground, which means that they have the longest amount of time that they can be held and thrown in the air, as they won't blow up the instant the timer ends, if they happen to be in the air, because you can't put napalm in the air, obviously. Demo Man, 2 frag grenades and 2 dynamite packs that will blow up and then blow up individual dynamite sticks. And on top of that, he's back to the 6 and 8. So his grenade launcher has 6 pills again, which people would think is overpowered, but it's really not. And the pipe bombs, or not pipe bombs, yeah, it is pipe bombs, that replace the sticky bomb launcher. So you can't put stickies on walls anymore, but you have pipe bombs to lay on the ground. They don't bounce very much. They have like 1 bounce and then they settle. So it's really good. Heavy has 1 dynamite pack and 3 frag grenades and functions exactly the same as normal. Engineer works pretty much the same. He's very much like his TFC counterpart, low health, low armor, shotgun, pistol, and wrench, with just standard building stuff. Has got 2 frag grenades and 2 EMP grenades. that don't do much on health, but really rip out your armor. So that's super viable, and they temporarily shut down enemy buildings. So it gives Engineer more of a reason to be slightly more offensive once he's secure in his building placement, and he could perhaps move around a bit more to help his team. Medic probably is the most powerful he's ever been. He's got a super SMG, very tight bullet spread, 2 frag grenades and 2 healing grenades that will heal anyone within the explosion radius and toxify anyone who is an enemy. And of course his melee is a syringe gun that toxifies the enemy player, and if the enemy player doesn't receive health, he can spread the infection by touching his teammates, and that can lead to some very hilarious shenanigans, and it gives Medic a lot more viability throughout combat. If he doesn't happen to have a heal target, he's got a self-defense mechanisms that wind up producing more in the sense of him being a combat medic as opposed to just a healer. Sniper's rifle functions like the TFC sniper rifle. You've got double or triple damage, I believe, for headshots like normal, as opposed to body shots, but now you've got half damage for leg shots, which will slow people down. So very much reminiscent of TFC and Quake Team Fortress especially in that mechanic. And of course you just got 3 frag grenades, and at the moment nothing else, because TFC removed the flares that he had in Quake Team Fortress, and that has stayed in this mod. And of course Spy, probably the strongest he's ever been. 2 frag grenades and 2 gas grenades that will disorient the player's vision in a different fashion than the concussion grenade. And he has 2 guns, the standard revolver and the tranquilizer gun, that will significantly decrease your mouse sensitivity so that he can get around for a quick stab or just pick you off with the revolver. Basically the strongest he's ever been, yeah. And what I like a lot about this mod is that there is no loadout system, for one thing, right? So when I started playing in 2023, so January of 23, that was just before the 0.7.1 update. And so at the time, after the 0.7 update hotfix, the game was in a really good spot. Scout had reasonable health. I think that the increase from 75 to 90 health for him is a bit much, but it does give him a bit more viability as more than an objective completer, especially considering that the damage that every class can deal now is incredibly high. The game is incredibly reliant on skill. It very much encourages people to get good through the abilities that it gives them. It almost seems as though they give them too much, because a lot of people think that grenades in games are just, you know, a spam item. But when you use the grenades in a strategic way, which is definitely possible because you can do it, it brings out this level of skill that kind of takes it to the next level in terms of Team Fortress gameplay, in a way that I've never really seen before. Something that would blow a lot of, like, even high-level Team Fortress 2 players out of the water. But the best part about there being no other weapons other than the ones that you just get is that you're not overwhelmed by decision fatigue on your end, and you're not overwhelmed by the amount of variety that everyone else possesses, which is something that I think base Team Fortress 2 struggles from immensely now, even still. There is a ton of variety to the point of there being very little incentive to really get good as just a standard beginner, because it's so overwhelming. But Pre-Fortress 2 isn't overwhelming. It's like you have the options in front of you. You have your class, you have the things that you're good at doing, and that's it, right? And there have been subtle balance changes in terms of class function, and I want to talk about those because there's just little things. Like, for one thing, I think increasing Engineer's armor and health to, well, from 80 to 90 health is negligible, but I think that it could have been kept for the sake of maintaining some classic feel. And in so doing, I think Scout probably should have stayed 75 health, but, you know, that's okay. What I don't understand is why Engineer now, like in July of 2025, why he has the ability to regenerate his armor passively in the same way that Medic can regenerate his health passively. It was added in the 0.7.3 update, health increased from 90 to 80, and added armor regeneration. Works similar to Medic's health regeneration. You will now regenerate at a rate of 1 to 3 armor every 3 seconds, depending on how long it's been since you've been last hit. I don't know why this is the case, because it doesn't make sense why the armor itself regenerates, because it's not like health. It's a stative effect that absorbs a certain amount of percent from your health depending on how heavy the armor is that you're wearing. And traditionally Engineer has always had 80 health, 50 medium armor, so it absorbs I think 50 to 60% of the damage that he receives into his health. So that's fine. It just doesn't make sense why he would regenerate armor, because no other class can do it, and it's not like I guess the logic is that if he can repair people's armor with his wrench, it's the same as Medic healing people with his Medigun. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because Engineer's primary function is as a defensive utility for his team. He's not the most support. Like, he has supportive buildings, right? But his role is a bit more defense-oriented, and I don't know why they would lean so much more into his role as a support class. In so doing is that he's able to support himself passively. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And there's just been some updates with very small balance changes that just confuse me. Like, there have been some balance changes since I have been playing this game, but none quite as confusing as these, especially considering that there are more gameplay changes. Like in the 0.7.1 update, there's a lot of gameplay changes in terms of like map logic and like a couple balance changes in terms of like functionality of weapons. Like in 0.7.1, Soldier and Demo Man have a extra 20% self-explosive damage resistance, but it doesn't apply to grenade jumping, right? And Pyro has a decreased afterburn from 10 seconds to 6 seconds, which makes complete sense. That's fine. Flame Rocket Radius Explosion was decreased a bit, which I never really noticed, because generally the most effective the rocket is when it's as close as possible. So, the radius being decreased down to 150 hammer units from 198 is fine. And there's just like little things, right? They're little things around stuff. But in 0.7.1 as well, there was also adding a tracer to the sniper rifle, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because for the same reason that you wouldn't want to do that to sniper in base Team Fortress. His advantage lies in the ability that he can sort of stay far enough away to where his shots need to be communicated through the people who receive them or die to them. Like, if you die to a sniper, you can communicate where he is. And having a tracer forces him to constantly reposition, and that's not the best thing for snipers' overall function, just from the standpoint that snipers function best when they are sitting in one spot, and they can sit in one spot and kind of get comfortable, because it leaves room for flankers like Spy and Scout to come in and deal with him. If he's constantly moving around all the time, he's not going to be as effective at his own job, and it actually leaves him a little more vulnerable to other classes. And you can say that that's, fine, especially if you're one of those people that thinks that Sniper should be completely rebalanced just out of spite. But there is a point where it falls outside of the range of acceptable outcomes for Sniper to be so visible. It's like having a little unusual effect go off in midair, wherever, like every 5 seconds when the Spy is invisible, a little flare goes off on his head and just hangs there in the air to give people a clue of where he was last and where he could be as a general radius, like every 5 seconds. It does something like that. It gives his position away when pretty much everyone's advantage. Everyone is always at an advantage when they're not seeable, because they can land the first hit, right? So I don't know why people would have that much visibility for Sniper, especially that particular tracer. Like, it's not the Team Fortress 2 classic tracer. It is a bright red Machina laser. It's really kind of weird. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But there were some good changes in that update too. Like, Spy had they reverted a change from a previous patch where Spy disguised fake health and armor as if they were hurt, which kind of gave them away a bit too easily, so now it works more in context with how like it would work normally, right? But 0.7.3 is where people, where things start to get really weird. For one thing, Scout having his health increased from 75 to 90 in previous updates was already fine because he only had 25 armor and he was still very weak, which made him like incredibly important to like move around a lot and be offensively viable, but also to focus on his task of attempting to complete objectives, right? You know, double capture rate on control points and carts and capturing the flag the best. But in this update, 0.7.3, his armor has been increased to 50, which will absorb just a little more damage and kind of makes him, it makes him on the same level as a spy, which is confusing because that's not the point. It sort of weakens everyone else as a result. But it just makes Scout ever so slightly more powerful in a way that doesn't need to be there. Like as a Scout, like as someone who played Scout a lot back in like older pre-Fortress versions, it was never a problem. And I don't know why it's a problem now, because like what seems to be the trend is that they're moving more away from the mix of TF2 beta and TFC, and they're trying to expand to do their own thing with this mod, which wasn't the initial purpose of it. It was always the impression from everyone who played back in the day that this mod would just be preserving some classic elements from old games and the beta version of the new game, and then sort of keeping it, maintaining it. And now it seems like they're really trying to do something else, like do their own thing with it and go their own way, so where it's no longer pre-Fortress 2, it's something else Fortress 2. And it's like, it's confusing. And then like they decrease armor on Soldier to 125 instead of 150, when that was never an issue, and it doesn't really affect the amount of damage he'll take or how he'll die. So it really just makes it seem as though they're making these small changes for nothing, and they increase his blast damage resistance as a result, when they could have just kept the extra armor, and it doesn't make sense. Changed rocket jumping to feel more like live TF2, and like that's another thing, because like a lot of people have built up muscle memory for rocket jumping in pre-Fortress 2, so it's just that little bit more confusing. They gave slight buffs to Pyro insofar as increasing his damage and increasing his incendiary rocket range and damage, kind of like slightly, but then decreased the flame rocket radius, like the blast radius, even further from 150, which we talked about previously, right, to 100 hammer units. So now the accuracy needs to be really, really good, and the mechanic is a lot less forgiving, when the whole point of the mechanic was that it could be more forgiving. You didn't have to worry about timing an air blast because you could fire a rocket of your own that moved slower, had an arc you needed to actually predict. You could charge the arc, but it was so slow that like it de-incentivized just spamming it from really far away because it was super easy to dodge. And the benefit of having it was that it could be a good way to, just alert a crowd to the ambush, and you could... there was a forgiving element of it for beginner players, and something that could be really utilized by pros that now it's really, really crushing down on. And I don't really know why. And it's the same with, Engineer. I mean, Demo Man got slightly buffed too, but only from a damage resistance perspective. Engineer had a health increase and armor regeneration. Again, I don't know why armor, because health makes sense, because you can vaguely tie it to how, in a lot of other shooter games, you can go down to critical health, but then like you slowly recharge, and you can slowly like heal back up, like in COD, how you can like your vision goes fuzzy or something, but it comes back if you can get away. But armor doesn't work like that, and it's confusing as to why they would do that, because it's just not like health. And then they disabled the speed buff for medics that are healing scouts, which is, again, just why. It's not... It just lowers medics' viability just that little bit, and it doesn't need to be there. And the sniper rifle... you used to be able to shoot the sniper rifle while in the air, and it prompted this really interesting skill that a lot of us older players used to use a lot, which was this jump shot thing, right? And you could predict vaguely where a target was going to be from when you peeked a corner last, jump up over cover, fire the shot, and hopefully you hit them, right? It was this kind of prediction. It was this luck thing and also a skill thing to like really time that shot right. And you could just fire it with the charge, right? Because the charge doesn't stop when you're in the air. And the counter to that was if you stayed behind cover too long or stay behind cover at all, people can throw their grenades behind you by either just throwing them and scaring you off, or timing their grenade throw so that when they press the button, they prime the grenade, and then the second time they throw it, it'll land on top of your head and blow up like the instant it goes over you, right? Which could kill you. And so it was this really interesting skill that could still be countered by every other class if the sniper was relying too heavily on that, facet of his gameplay. And it was this really interesting increase in skill. And now they've just straight up removed it. Like, you cannot fire a shot if you're jumping. You can only fire in the air if it wasn't initiated by a jump. So like if you got blasted upwards by a soldier rocket or something, you can fire the rifle still as like a means of self-defense, but it no longer rewards your placement and positioning to jump shot anymore. You're only allowed to jump shot if you weren't the one jumping, and it's really confusing. It's really confusing. But they did buff spy to add spy walking, which I only ever knew existed in something like TF2C, where if you press shift while disguised as a class that walks slower than the spy, you can walk that spy's speed to like get somewhere faster. You just have to remember to do it not around other people, around enemies. So it's interesting that they would implement that, because that's fine. I don't actually mind the spy walk mechanic. I actually think that's pretty good. Disguised spies can also fake medic ubercharge values, which is interesting. And then they removed the voice bubble above their head if they were disguised, and like that was giving them away, right? Which is pretty good. And then they increased the damage from the gas grenade. So there's these weird buffs and nerfs that don't make a whole lot of sense. They're making weak classes just that little bit stronger, which would be fine if they weren't making the stronger classes even less strong. Like, there's a lot of things that aren't necessary, like the engineer, passive armor regeneration, nerfing the sniper's jump shot, which was incredibly situationally useful. It really wasn't even that big of a thing. Medics not getting to run with their scouts when they heal them anymore, which was really frustrating. But then nerfing soldiers' armor slightly, only to increase his blast damage resistance from himself. It just doesn't make sense. And the funny thing is that I did actually ask in the Pre-Fortress 2 Discord server why people would, why they would nerf the sniper jump shot, and the only response I got from Sour Danny was that it wasn't fun. And I'm having my own video on the objective assessment of sniper in TF2 itself, but the short answer to this question is that you can't balance a game around a subjective preference such as fun, because you are either solidifying yourself as an arbiter of what fun is, like an arbiter of truth, so to speak, or you are admitting that fun is objectively quantifiable, which, as far as I'm aware, is something that a lot of people fight against, because everyone fights so much for the idea of fun being inherently subjective, right? So I don't know why people would just nerf things just because they're unfun. There has to be a functional purpose for it. There has to be like a functional, more objective reason within the game balance to explain why something isn't working right, or why this thing shouldn't be there. And I never got an answer for that. That was never explained in a mature or appropriate way. And recently, the Pre-Fortress 2 team just updated the game to the final update before the Steam port, which is 0.7.4, the Cold Snap update. It's a holiday-themed event, which already is kind of messing with the integrity of the mod and what a lot of older players knew the game for, which was just so strictly in the style of TF2 to the point where most custom maps were in that desert theme, and like it was focused so much on the skill of the game, and everyone was really, really, really good at the game. But you could get really good at the game really easy, and yet it was such a struggle to play, and there was this reward you would get from enjoying that, right? And fighting for your skill. And all of a sudden we're getting holiday updates and a bit more catering to subjective preferences of what it means to be fun, because I'd assume they would say the same reasoning for all the other balance changes that they had in the previous update, right? But anyways, they are starting to incorporate domination maps which I don't really understand. It's kind of like a territory control thing. Domination kicks off with neutral control points scattered across the map. Each owned point earns your team 1 point per second. Yeah, so it's kind of like that 4-team method in TF2C, where that's how it works in TF2C, but with 4 teams, except they're only doing 2. And I don't understand why, because it's not the most interesting. I guess that is subjective, but it is interesting that they would include this. I mean, as long as they're not removing arena mode, right? Because arena mode works really good in this game. New capture the flag maps, which is always nice to see, because capture the flag needs more love. But they're holiday themed now. They're winter themed, which is just a little weird, because I don't think that events really work that well in games like this. I really think they should stick more to the integrity of the mod itself, like, because they had the integrity there at one point. They really did, and they've been slipping now for a little bit. And from what I've been hearing, the team is thinking of adding a loadout system, like re-adding a loadout system, because apparently, like, in the older version of the old version of the mod, there used to be a loadout system, and they removed it because of just wanting to be strictly beta focused, right? Beta focused with refining, right? But now they're thinking of adding a loadout system back in, which means they could put new weapons into the game, and I'm really not excited for that. I'm actually kind of worried about that, because a lot of times people will just add weapons and they won't work well considering the functionality of the game. And I think just for the sake of Pre-Fortress 2 maintaining its integrity, or former integrity at this point, it shouldn't have a loadout system at all. It should still focus on getting good at the tools you're given and just being really good at the class, and not leaning so much into the variety of things just for the fun of it, right? It doesn't make sense with the structure of the game, where it is this mix of TFC and TF2's beta and a little bit of spice on top to refine it, keep it functioning well. And like the classes as they stood and technically still stand now, even with the changes, are at their most powerful states. All of them, every single one of them. And no fight feels unfair, which I know is, it's a little subjective, but just going back to all the experiences I've had with players worse and better than me, there's always a way for someone to outmaneuver you, or just outsnipe you, or outkill you, or outjump you. And there's all these things that feed into naturally breeding skill and prioritizing skill as the thing that the mod will like reward you for. And it's this incredible thing, because even on the individualistic level, it's really good. And on the team level, it's astounding, because working with the team to do something, especially on custom maps, is great. It's really great. And I don't think a loadout system is actually going to benefit that. And I hear that they're going to try to put hats into the game, and it's like that's its own mess, because that's just a distraction from what the game should be. And they want to throw in stuff like, I don't know, other grenades or something, or maybe rethink the way they balance grenades. Like, I've been hearing rumors just about how they want to do things, and it's scary, because I've gotten really good at a game that maintained its integrity really well, to the point where even the custom maps went out of their way to still maintain some level of gameplay integrity, even if they looked stupid. Things like Capture the Flag Vikings, Capture the Flag Convoy, wacky races, balloon races. What was that? The house one, the 2 houses map. Even though it was incredibly wide open, that was still really, really fun to play. And just maps like that. Or CP Desperado. Desperado was an incredible map. I think Mach was a good map. Just stuff like that. Stuff where like there's a lot of really interesting and excited things that happen and still happen, in the game. And I think that if the developers are moving in a direction that caters more towards making the game easier and a bit more forgiving, it will push away the fan base, that part of their fan base that really got good enough at the game, to where they held it in respect, where they held it in high regard, and really had, some hardcore, they had a really hardcore fan base, because they did at one point. They really did. Like, back when Nailgun World was still good, everyone would want to play every day. I used to waste so much of my time in high school just playing the heck out of that game in the Nailgun World servers, because it was such a good game and everyone wanted to play it, and it was really, really awesome. Especially at the height of Nailgun World's popularity, where there was one server for regular maps, another server for custom maps, and then a third server at one point even for like crazy coding shenanigans that the leader wanted to implement and stuff, right? And it's really, I hope that they don't mess with the game any further than they have, because they've already sort of stretched the game out to a point that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like removing sniper's jump shot, engineer's passive armor increase, or armor regeneration, I'm sorry. And like you can say that I'm making too much of a big deal out of this, or that I'm looking too deeply into this, but I know from looking through the history of Quake Team Fortress and Team Fortress Classic and Team Fortress 2 itself, that there are little things. They always start out as little things, from complaints of fans or personal wants of the developers that they just can't help themselves but put into the game at base, right? I hope that when they do port the game to Steam, there are options to retreat to older versions of the game, because in my personal opinion, and this is just my opinion because I don't have anything to fully substantiate it, not objectively at least, not yet, but in my opinion, the best version of the game was 0.7.2. 0.7.2 was the best version of the game, and with 0.7.3 and 0.7.4, they've been slipping in a direction that doesn't lend itself well to the identity of the game and the mechanics that they've sought to refine and build for so long. So if the developers are somehow listening to this, I implore you guys to reconsider your direction with this, and when you port it to Steam, please don't throw the integrity of the game out for the sake of a shallower idea of what fun is. Try to keep the game itself in mind. Really, really try, because I don't want my favorite game to slip into what TF2 now is, where they tried so much to cater to what people wanted to the point of angering so many people and then just outright leaving because they didn't want to deal with it anymore. And what's really interesting is that the developers know how to maintain class identity in this game, because the second question in their questions and answers article from, oh my gosh, it's been 3 years. 3 years ago, they had a questions and answers article, and the second question is shotgun for medic. And a lot of custom servers did, and I think a couple still do, actually add a shotgun for medic instead of his super SMG. And they say a shotgun allows the medic to play way too far outside of his intended TF2 role. In magazine promos for TF2 from late 2006, statements such as, the medic has been completely changed in terms of how he works to previous TF, and the medic class has been thoroughly gutted and redesigned, were made, which is a pretty clear indication that in 2006, the era this mod is based on, the medic was likely closer to the TF2's incarnation than he was to TFC's. So they understand how to make this work. I know they do. I just don't know if they're caving to social pressure or if they genuinely have sort of lost their way of sorts. They don't want to remove any grenade options, as far as I'm aware, because even 3 years ago they were we don't have any plans to remove the additional frag grenades most classes have, because they had most of the classes have frag grenades, just general frags, and then specialized grenades for their specific roles, right? And it balances out really well. And in the 0.8 update, when it comes to Steam, hopefully they'll have bot support, a proper tutorial, which would be great to play with offline bots, and then some a proper tutorial. Hey, developers, if you guys want, hit me up. I will do that tutorial, because I know this game inside and out so well. I would love to make a tutorial similar to I don't know, Fortress Forever, because Fortress Forever has a really good tutorial method, I think. So I would really love to do something like that. And so as a sort of final message to the developers of Pre-Fortress 2, if you guys are watching this, or if somebody who knows them is watching this, please send this to them. I am, without a shadow of a doubt, your biggest fan. I have played this game probably more than TF2 itself, probably more than any other Team Fortress version, Team Fortress game, Team Fortress mod, anything. I have played this game a lot. I really played it in its most active lifespan. I sort of fell away as I did other TF2 related projects because friends needed me for favor projects, but I always come back to this game. This is, outside of like Doom 2016, this is my favorite game. And it's such my favorite game to the point where I don't want to teach my family or my friends how to play Team Fortress 2. I want to teach them how to play this game, because this game, Pre-Fortress 2, is the best incarnation of the Team Fortress formula I have ever experienced. And I've played on Quake Team Fortress, like the really, really old versions that you can get off online for like in shady methods, I suppose. I've played Fortress 1, which is the modern redesign client of it. I should play that one more, but I've played that one. I've played Team Fortress Classic. I've played this. I've played TF2. I've played TF2C. I've played Open Fortress, and I continue to try to find other Team Fortress experiences to, you know, move around and find, because I really, and it always comes back to Pre-Fortress, right? Because this game combines the best experiences of every game I've ever played in one, right? It's got grenades that are specialized to the classes that they're equipped by without undermining or superseding their skill sets. They give movement abilities for everybody if they need to get to combat faster and really want to take that risk of extra damage. And the class balance is incredible. Medic is stronger than he's ever been, and it somehow works because everyone else is stronger too. Engineer is reliant on his buildings. Sniper is reliant on his need to be campy and long range. Spy can be way more aggressive because he has 2 guns, and I think the cloak is a little longer. I don't actually remember, but the cloak works really, really well. Scout is really good. He doesn't need the double jump when he has the mobility of the concussion grenades anymore. It's wonderful. Heavy is great. Demo Man's great. Soldier's great. Pyro's rebalance, like to not have air blast, is tremendous. Everything in this game works really well, and it has worked. And like I said, 0.7.1 is my favorite update. It was the prime of this mod's life because of just how much it asked the player to get good without beating them over the head with it. It's like, here are your tools, right? Now impress me. And it was tremendous. It bred so much skill in the core fan base that this mod had, and probably still has in fledgling numbers, because I know game sessions still happen through the Discord server, but they happen on custom maps and rebalance servers, I think, and like just other things that don't really strike the same anymore. And I implore you guys, as your biggest endorser, okay? Because once I'm done with a couple of like standard TF2 projects, I'm done. I'm done with that game. I'm quitting that game. I don't want to be a part of that game anymore. I want to go back to playing Pre-Fortress 2, because my channel grew the most when it was around Pre-Fortress 2. And one day I hope to actually republish all of my old Pre-Fortress videos, which you can still access unlisted on my channel. It's in a playlist somewhere, okay? It's a playlist that says Pre-Fortress 2. Some of my greatest gaming memories, my happiest times as a gamer, was playing this mod in the height of its popularity. And I will endorse it to the end of my days, so long as it doesn't eat itself alive. So please, please, make the right decisions. Please don't screw this up. I know that's kind of subjective in the sense that I'm not really giving a whole lot of objective reasoning as to why things aren't working the way they should, or why I think the way I do. This is kind of meant to be sort of an unscripted rant, or not even rant, just more of a letter, really, because I want to get these thoughts through as legitimately and as wholly as possible. So I don't want this game to die off because it got too big for its britches, right? The way that it works right now, like even with the needless balance changes that have occurred recently, okay? Even with those, the game still maintains its integrity. There's cracks, but there's few, like a few, to the point where I would still rate this game very, very highly, because despite the weirdness of a couple of recent decisions, it still works, and it still works amazingly. I haven't really played too much of the new maps or any newer facets of the new update yet, mostly because I'm scared of the event-themed things, because I don't think event-themed things are really good as permanent updates. I just want this game to maintain the integrity that it had when I started playing it 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I've been playing this game for 2.5 years now, and I really hope you guys do the right thing, because of all the games I ever played, this is the one that I really want to play with people the most. And I really hope you guys, at the very least, have a method when you port it to Steam to include older versions for the sake of historic documenting. Like, I know you guys have a site where you have all of your versions up publicly, because I've downloaded all of them, but still, there's got to be... I would at least ask for a way to go back to the older versions of the game, because I don't just want there to be some kind of like way to code in the old things into the servers, because at that point it's like, oh, there is no integrity to the game, because you can make it your own and make it whatever you want. And it's like, I want the intended experience to be the best experience it possibly can be, so that any modification is merely an enhancement in different directions, but an enhancement, right, of a pre-existing formula that already is awesome. Right now it's good, but it used to be great. And I really want it to continue being great, because this is the game I love the most. So if there are any developers listening to this, this is what I have to say. This is my like critique so far of Pre-Fortress in the time that I've played it, and my understanding of the game as a veteran of 2.5 years that has played this game immeasurably extensively and has gotten really, really good at it. So do with that what you will. And for the rest of you, I highly recommend downloading this mod, because it really is and can be probably the greatest Team Fortress experience you'll ever have.